hockey fans. The Minnesota Hockey Connection show is on the air. We're at PACT-TV studios on a cold Tuesday, the day after Martin Luther King Day. It's January 16th, and we're on the air. So I was going to have a couple guests come on, and because of the cold and little sickness going on, they could not make it. So today I want to put a lot of time into Class AA High School, Minnesota Boys High School, and talk about all the teams and where each section is going and what sections are strong and the players from some of these teams that probably will be up for Mr. Hockey Award this year, and the Frank Brinzik as the top goalie, senior goalie of the year. So let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to start by saying you can get a lot of information on my rankings and certain players and pictures and stories during the week because I go to a lot of games almost every day. I go to high school games, college games, and sometimes if there's no college or wild games, I go to juniors on the weekend. So there's a lot of information and updates of these teams and scores during the game and what's going on during the game. So I put that up on Facebook. So Jerry Borough, that's Jerry, B as in boy, Oroughh, is a good Facebook page. Minnesota Hockey Connection doesn't get as much because somehow Facebook doesn't put, I can't share a lot of stuff back into the Minnesota Hockey Connection, and I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. And then Twitter, Minnesota Hockey Connection, Minnesota Hockey Connection. I will repost a lot of hockey information that you probably never saw or heard, or information that's good stuff. So Minnesota Hockey Connection on Twitter. So let's get going. I'm going to start with, I was at the Wild game last night, and finally they played, I think, one of their best games of the year. They beat the New York Islanders 5-0. And New York is a really good team this year. The Islanders, they're 19, 13, and 10. So they got 48 points. And the Wild are under 500. They've been playing miserable. They're 17, 20, and 5 with 39 points. So the Wild beat them 5-0. Marc-Andre Fleury got his, I think it's a 552nd victory, which is the second most now in the National Hockey League all time for goalie victories. Plus another shutout. I think it's his 74th shutout. But this was the Wild's best game. So let's hope they can keep it going. They go down for 3 hard games and two in Florida, Tampa Bay on Thursday, Florida Panthers on Friday, and then they go up to Carolina Hurricanes on Tuesday. So 3 tough games down in the southeast. And if they can get a couple victories, I think they're getting back. They got some of their players back. Kaprizov, Brodin are back, so that's going to help the team. And they got a few more that are still injured, so we have to wait and see on those players. But they had press conferences yesterday, and Bill Guerin, general manager of the Wild, thinks this team is okay and doesn't seem to want to make any changes, but you never know. So let's see how the team starts going. They got to get it going, though, if they want to make the playoffs. So they're a few points behind the playoff position. So there you go for the Minnesota Wild. UMD, I saw both games with Colorado College men this weekend. It was pretty even. Colorado came back last minute of regulation on Friday night, tied the game, but UMD won it in overtime by overtime goal by Ben Steves. The guy is a sure goal scorer on the team. So, but Saturday night, just the opposite happened. They went to overtime and they lost in overtime to Colorado College. Colorado College has a pretty nice team. They're 18th on the pairwise. Top 16 get into the region, so they can have a good chance if they keep on playing good and get a little better the second half of the year. And they had a few Minnesota high school players, former high school players on their team. They had Chase Foley and Ray Christie, both St. Thomas Academy players. They had Max Burkholder, Chaska, and Connor Mayle. I forget where he played. I think it was Bernal. So they had 4 really nice Minnesota players on that team, and they put a lot of time on the ice. So good for those Minnesota kids. But a split for UMD, and UMD really almost has to win 80% of their games if they have any chance of making the top 16. So good luck to them. But they got some problems at center. I think they got 3 centers out now from injuries, so that's not a good part. College and the Pro National Hockey League, if you don't have good centers, they're hard to find. You need the centers because they do a lot of the work. So there you go there. So let's get back where I wanted to talk about today. And I'm going to start out what I have for the Class AA rankings I have. I do this every week. Like I said, you can go on my Facebook, Minnesota Hockey Connection, Twitter, Minnesota Hockey Connection, and my regular Facebook, which almost 95% is hockey stuff on my regular. That's Jerry Borough, JerryBoroughh. If you're a hockey fan and I notice that, I will accept you as a friend. So, and the other 2 you can just follow and like, and you're on. So I appreciate if you do that. So let's get down to the rankings. We got Minnetonka still number 1. I don't think they lost a game in, 35 games now. So that's from going into last year, and they won the state tournament in Class AA. And like a lot of people know, they got 9 D1s. They just played Duluth East, and hey, East didn't give them that bad of a game. They lost, what was it, 6-3. So we'll see. But Tonka has 9 D1s, and there's 2 more players I think will make D1 commits in the next year or so. They're younger players. So Minnetonka 14-0-1 so far this season. Okay, number 2, Wayzata 13-0-2. And boy, Wayzata is just a nice team. Pat O'Leary, former golfer, he's been there, about 13 years, and he's doing a real good job. And he always gets them very defensive oriented, and they just play a good team game where the superstars don't come out. It's just a really nice team where it goes deep on their lines and their D, and they move the puck and they get pucks deep, and just the way they play. And when the goalies are playing good, they're good, very good. And number 3, I still have Edina. They got a big game with Tonka on Thursday night down in Braemar, Edina's rink. They're 13-2. Kurt Giles, always a well-coached team. They got super stars as coaches down there, and so it's a very well-coached team with him heading it. And he's been around the game a long time. I think he's been there about over 20 games. Let's see, I got it down here, I think. 25 years, yeah. 25 years, Kurt Giles at Edina. Seems like yesterday he was up playing at UMD. and then the pros and the North Stars. Number 4, I'm starting to really like this team, Chanhassen. They probably have the best goalie in Cam Hendrickson. They're 13-4. They started out slow. They lost their first 2 games, and then they've been playing really good. They lost an overtime game. They gave Tonka all they can handle. And this team I really like because of their goaltending, because some of the transfers that came out of Chanhassen, Chaska area went over to Tonka, and that's some of their D1 commits. And so there's a little rivalry there and competition when they play each other. And that's why the games are always been close in the last couple of years because of these transfers. Because these kids played with each other growing up and they know each other. And so it's becoming a great rivalry with Chanhassen and Tonka. And they're in the same section. So there is a good chance again that they can get to the finals in Section 2. So we'll see. Number 5, Maple Grove. They don't have the superstars like they usually do, but they have a really good team-oriented, well-coached team. They're 10-4. Benil, Ken Pauly, he's been around, at least 30 years. And they're 10-3-1. Benil St. Margaret. Number 7, Rogers. They played good this last week. They've been their ups and downs, but they're a junior-oriented team. So they got probably five juniors and a sophomore that'll probably go D1 on this team. So it's a very, very talented team, and you got to watch offensively. And number 8, Andover, Mark Manny. He's been around for, 13 years, I think. He's 10-5-1. And Andover's in Section 7, so they play the likes of Grand Rapids, and Rock Ridge is in 7 now. Duluth-Denfield's in 7AA, and Duluth East. So Andover will probably be the favorite in that section, but with hot goalie and things can change. And then number 9, we got St. Thomas Academy, well coached, a young team. Mike Randolph, former Duluth East coach, who just broke 700 victories in coaching high school hockey. He's the 3rd most right now on the list, and I think he only needs about 8 more to be the top high school coach for victories. And the team is, like I said, is very young, but their back end is very, very good. Their goaltending solid. Their D are solid. That if I had a little weakness on the team, is probably they're not deep on the scoring. And kind of like the Class A team up here in the Duluth area, Hermantown. Very, very good on the back end, very good goalie, but their scoring is not very deep, one line usually. So they play, and by the way, they play Hermantown on the Friday night, the 26th. So up at Hermantown. So if you want to see a good hockey game where 2 teams are well coached, 2 good goalies, and 2 good backends, it'll be an interesting game. I think that's a 1-goal game for sure. And number 10, a team that hasn't really been in the top 10 ever, but the program is starting to really look good. If the kids can stay in high school, this is going to be a very, very good team. They got a lot of sophomores. Their top scorers are sophomores, and they got a lot of good juniors too, so it's a very young team. They're 12-3-1. That's Shakopee. Then I got teams to watch. We got Centennial, Eastview, Eden Prairie, Gentry Academy, Hill Murray, Holy Family, Rockridge, Rosal, Rosemont, Stillwater, and White Bear Lake. So, and Class AA, it's kind of funny this year, but I say the first 4 teams Minnetonka, Wayzata, Edina, and Chanhassen are above all the other teams. But 5 through the next 15 teams, any day one will beat the other one, so there's no consistency in these teams. So there's going to be a lot of changes every week. 1 or 2 will move out of the top 10, and 1 or 2 will move in. So what it comes down to, what team is ready when the playoffs start. And that's where the coaching comes in, the timing and getting your team ready for the playoffs. So let me go over some of the sections now in the playoffs and what I think about each section. I'm going to start with Section 1AA. That's the South. That's the top teams are Lakeville South, Lakeville North, Rochester, Century, New Prague, and boy, this is probably the weakest section I've seen in a long time. Lakeville South is probably the favorite, but these teams are so weak. I don't know. It's a weak section. That's all I can say. And I'll guarantee you this section will be unseeded when it comes down to seeding the 5 state tournament teams. Okay, 2AA. This is one of the toughest sections in the state by far. We got Minnetonka. We got Chanhassen, which I hope and expect to get to the finals. But there's teams that can beat these teams with a hot goalie. You got Shakopee that's in the top 10. EP's right on the border of getting into the top 10. And Holy Family has a very nice team. So there's 5 really good teams in this section. So 2 of them are going to have to play in the quarterfinals. So they're going to have 3 good games to get to state on 4 and 5 seeded. So that's probably my number 1 section of strength. Okay, number 3AA is it's a very competitive section. And there's 4 teams and possibly 5 teams that can get to state in this section too. They got St. Thomas Academy, Eastview, Rosemont, Cretin, and Park of Cottage Grove. This team doesn't have really the top 5 team, but they got a couple good goalies, couple of these teams, and they got some good D, and there's some a lot of youth in the 2 private schools, St. Thomas Academy and Cretin. So, but I would not look past this section. And I think it's a possibility that they can get seeded for sure. And number 4AA, you got Hill Murray, Stillwater, Gentry Academy, and White Bear Lake. This is probably the weakest this section has been for a while, and it's up for grabs. Any one of these 4 teams, I mean, they're pretty even right now. So 4AA, Stillwater, Gentry Academy, Hill Murray, White Bear Lake. 5AA, you got Rogers, Maple Grove, Chaplin Park, Centennial. So it's another one. Rogers and Maple Grove are probably a little bit ahead of Centennial and Chaplin Park, but it's going to be another wide open section. So, but 6AA, every year it seems like it's going to be Wayzata and Edina in the finals. Vanille has a really nice team. They're young, but they got a senior goalie that's very good. And then Holy Angels, very young team, but they're very solid. I think Holy Angels, I remember when Greg Treble, the old Jefferson Bantam, his 2 sons, one played pro, and the other one, they both played for the Gophers and that. He kind of developed a lot of these kids that those Jefferson years in the early 90s. So then he went over to Holy Angels, and then Holy Angels won a couple state tournaments under him. So Greg Treble, there hasn't been a top 10 team at Holy Angels since his time. But I think next year, I think there's a good chance, because they're very young, and if they pick up a couple, 2 or 3 decent players, they're going to be a very solid team, and I think they can get in the top 10 next year. Number 7, boy. Boy. Northern Hockey hasn't been good this year compared to what some of the teams in the Twin Cities are doing. So you got Andover, which is a Twin Cities team, is probably the best in Section 7 AA. Grand Rapids, Rockridge, Duluth East, and Duluth Denfield. Boy, it's not very competitive. Andover should win this, but any one of these teams can upset Andover, because Andover, even though they're in the top 10, is not that solid, consistent as they have been in the past. So, but this section will not be seeded. This might be the first in a long time that they won't be seeded when they go to state, I think. Unless Andover picks it up and they win that section. That's the only chance. And then another section that's really down, 8AA, the Northwest now. You got Moorhead, Rosal, Elk River, and Sartell. And none of those teams are the best team. Maybe Moorhead and Rosal are out there close to 20. So it's not a good section either. So they almost for sure will not be seeded either. So 1, 4, 7, and 8. 3 of those teams will be unseeded. Where 2, 3, 5, 6 will, and then one of the 4 teams I just named before that. So let's go and talk about the teams that are, how I compare teams. I think Minnetonka will repeat. But let's go over some of the teams that I think will get to the state tournament. First of all, players. There's five things I do for ranking teams and how they'll do and get to the state and how they'll do at the state. Number 1 is players. It doesn't really go in this order, but players on the team, the skilled players, okay, coaching, the coaches, schedules. Do you have a hard schedule? If you have an easy schedule, then you go to state. It's almost impossible to win 3 tough games. In Class AA, you usually have to play 3 tough games. Then how you do with special teams, your penalty killing percentage, your power play. I mean, some of these teams are ridiculously good. Like Maple Grove is almost 50% power play. But in that same section, we got Chanhassen's almost 98% penalty kill. That's unheard of. So it's stuff like that that makes these teams so good and how I rank them. And then the number, I think if it comes down to state tournament, 3 games you got to win it, is goaltending. So your goalie has to get hot. And so that's how I'll be ranking it the rest of the season, and when it gets to state, what teams make it and how I'll seed them myself. And let's go over a few of the teams, what they have. Tonka. They're, like I said, they got Sean Goldsworthy. He's 7th year there. They won the state tournament last year, but he's coached over at St. Olaf for many years. He's the son of Goldie Goldsworthy, Bill. And so he's been in the hockey world his whole life. and their penalty kill is 81%, but they got 9 D1. So players, they're number 1. Coaching, they're in the top 10. Let's see, schedule. The Lake Conference right now is the toughest conference in the state. And Edina's, Wazetta's, Eden Prairie's and that. And then they go out and play other tough teams during the year. So their schedule is right there at the top. So they get top grade for that. Their special teams, their power play is by far number 1. Their penalty kill, I'd say probably in pretty close to the middle of the top 10 teams. And the last is goaltending. That's the only concern I have with Tonka. Most of these teams have new goalies this year from last year. And so the goalie can have a bad game. And no team can afford it if they get to state to have a bad game. So Tonka would be my number 1 team right now. Number 2, Wazetta. Okay. Players, they got a lot of team players and I'd say they went not super elite, but they got about 5 players that really work good together and they're deep. And you got to like that. And then Edina, Kurt Giles coaching. They got young kids, they got seniors. By the time state tournament, the playoffs come around, they'll be a very good team. And boy, their schedule's good. Number 1, special teams, I'd say they're in the middle. Special teams, little high on, they're good, very good on the penalty kill. And then their goaltending is new, so we just don't know. And then the other team, I'm just going to go with the top 4 of this right now, is Chanhassen. Penalty kill, number 1. Players, top of the list. I'd say number 2 team in the state for players. Number 3, schedule. They've done a lot better job, so above average in the top 10. Special teams, like I said, very good toward the top. Goaltending, I think, is the number 1 goalie. So Chanhassen, keep a watch on that team to the playoffs. And I hope it comes down to Tonka and Chanhassen for the section finals. And too bad it not played at Mariucci, where they'd fill the place easily. They'd fill the Excel if that game was on. So there you go on the Class AA. I'd like to talk a little more about it, but we'll do that down the line, more on these Class AA teams. And so that's the week of hockey up in Duluth, Twin Cities. And let's go wild. Let's go college teams in the state. There's 61 teams, and high school is getting another month away before the playoffs starts. And so it's going to be great. So I want to thank the PACT-TV producers, Liz and Jim. And I'm going to Minnesota Hockey Connection. Go online and like it. Our Jerry Borough, Borough, and friend me, and you'll get a lot of information on hockey. So thanks a lot. We'll see you at the rink.